So you've probably seen birch trees before. They're these white trees. You'll see them around. Kind of look like they have paper bark. Today we're going to draw and paint birch trees. Now everybody's going to draw at least 3 different birch trees in their drawing. One in the foreground, one in the middle ground, and one in the background.
What do I mean when I say foreground, middle ground, background?
Foreground is whatever is closest to you in the picture. Background is whatever is farthest away from you. And middle ground is in the middle. So I'm just going to sketch my foreground tree. If I want to make a branch going off the side, that's just fine. I wouldn't overdo it. And I can just kind of sketch it in, it's kind of like a controlled scribble. And I'm just going to make that go out right off the top of the paper. Now, a lot of my students are tempted to just make the tree just go right off the bottom of the paper. Don't do that. We can draw where the roots kind of go into the ground. It's going to look better that way. So next, I'm going to move slightly up the paper into my middle ground. And I'm going to do the same thing. It's okay to make this tree a little bit smaller because it's a little bit further back. Now after that, I'm going to do the same thing for my background tree. I'm going to move up the paper into the background and do the same thing. Go in right off the top of the paper. After this, I'm going to give it a horizon line.
A horizon line is the line where the sky meets the ground. Putting a horizon line in your artwork can give it the illusion of depth and make it look like it's going back in space.
When I draw my horizon line, I'm going to have to stop when I hit a tree and then just pick it up on the other side. Now I'm going to show you a little trick using India ink. Now I'm using India ink and an old Target card right now. And I'm going to put a little bit of ink onto the card and I'm going to rub a little bit on another piece of paper just so there's not much. And then I'm going to bring that card right up to my birch tree and just kind of scrape it across. And scrape it across. Now this is going to make little lines that are going to look just like a birch tree. And I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm dipping my card into the India ink. I'm wiping a little bit off on another piece of paper, and then I'm going down the sides of all of my birch trees, dragging that India ink to make the lines for the birch bark. This can be a little bit tricky, and it's sometimes nice to work on another piece of paper just to practice a little bit. But again, I'm going to dip my card into the India ink. I'm going to take a little bit of the ink off on another piece of paper, and then I'm going to scrape that card across the sides of the birch tree to make the texture of a bark, of birch tree bark. When I'm done with that, I'm going to continue drawing a little bit. Maybe I'm going to go over the lines on the sides of the birch trees, maybe around the roots, just so I can see them a little bit better. I'm using a really fine tip Sharpie marker, but you could use a crayon or whatever you got, ballpoint pen. Now we're going to do some watercoloring over this, and we're going to paint some shadows in ink. So you can't use a normal marker if you're going to do this because the lines will bleed. But Sharpie, permanent markers work, crayons will work, oil pastels, ballpoint pen, whatever you got, that'll be fine. Now I'm going to mix up some water with some of the India ink. And this is going to make a translucent ink that the paper will show through. And the white of the paper is going to mix with the black from the ink. And it's just going to be kind of a gray. So I'm going to use this ink and water wash that I just made to make shadows on the birch trees. Thinking about light source. When I think about light source, you've got to think that light will be coming from one side of the paper. It'll be shining down. It'll make a little shadow on the thing you're drawing, but it will also have a cast shadow on the ground. If I change the side that the light comes from, the shadow will be on the other side. So in my drawing, the light's coming from the top right, from the sun. So I am going to have a shadow on the left side of my birch trees. I'm also going to have a shadow coming off the trees, off the whole bottom of the tree, going to the left because the sun has light coming down from the right. So the shadow will be on the left side. You can choose which way your light source is. It can come from the left or right. That's up to you. Do this for all of the different trees. The shadow should come off the whole bottom of each of the trees. Now this shadow from my background tree, it's gonna be interrupted by my foreground tree. So that shadow would be behind that tree. So we're gonna have to use overlap when we do that. And it would stop when you hit the tree and then you would pick it up on the other side. Don't forget to look for any shadows from any branches either that may be up there. Now I have let this dry for a little bit, and now I'm gonna do some more drawing on top of it. First I'm just gonna draw in that horizon line using my fine tip Sharpie, just so I can kind of see where the sky and the ground meet. Now I'm using some oil pastels, but you could also use crayons or colored permanent markers. And we're gonna make some fall pictures. So it's gonna make it kind of look like leaves are falling on the ground. I'm using red, orange, yellow, brown for my leaves. Now you can draw whatever you want on yours. I'm just kind of doing a basic one. I'm gonna put some clouds in the sky in white. But you could draw whatever you want. If you want animals in there, kids jumping in piles of leaves or whatever other fall stuff you can think of, you can put it in there. So you're not limited to just what I'm doing. You can get creative with it. Now I am going to use some watercolors. You could also just color this in if you wanted. That's fine. Then you could pretty much use anything. I'm using liquid watercolors, but the semi-soft palette watercolors work just fine too. Or you could even take a little tempera paint and mix some water in it and make a wash that way. That works too. But I'm going to start filling in the sky and then the ground. So I really hope you like this. It's a fun project. You get to paint a little, we get to you do the trick with the ink in the card for the birch bark. We think foreground, middle ground, background, light source. I really hope you enjoy yourself, and I really can't wait to see what you come up with. Bye, everybody.